So glad to see everyone here. Some of you new faces, relatives maybe of the babies that we're going to dedicate after the service. Some folks are visiting, so we love that. We love having you here. Just so you know, we'll call the moms and dads and babies up in just a little bit. So don't feel obligated to stay in here if you don't need to, but you are welcome, because we, as a family, we don't kick the kids out of the dinner table to we want them all. We want you all here together. And if they're a little loud, I'm going to keep preaching. So hopefully it doesn't bother anybody. So we'll trust that it's going to take care of itself. Okay. But what a blessing it is to have all of you here, have the babies here. We're going to continue preaching through what Jesus was teaching his disciples just before he ascended. So he had risen from the grave, and for 40 days he walked this earth, and he taught his disciples what it was going to be like when he was no longer here, that they would be the ones that would take the church forward. And so they needed to know some things. We talked about this, they had memorized most of the Old Testament, or a lot of it, and yet they didn't fully understand it. And even with a story like Ruth, they probably just thought it was maybe a nice historical story. And Jesus started to open their minds to what the scriptures were teaching them. And he does the same thing, I believe, with us now. So 2,000 years ago, Jesus was teaching the disciples. 2,000 years later, Jesus is teaching us the same truths. And it's the same calling to serve him. And we do that through families. We do that through other relationships. You may not have children right now, but you have opportunities to serve others in a family type setting. So the family, I believe, is established by God. We saw it early on in the Garden of Eden. It doesn't always turn out great, does it? Even in the Garden of Eden, it got kind of rough there, and it's never stopped because of sin. As sin entered the world, relational issues were a result. So we want to look at what it's designed to be like, what the family is designed to be like. And I'm just talking about the biological family. I'm talking about any family, any group of people that come together and commit to each other is a family. We're a family here. We're a Christian family. So families matter to God. Jesus opened their minds to what the scriptures meant. Ruth and Boaz is basically the story we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to have to go through it quickly because there's a lot here that normally you could easily do this in 4 weeks or 4 months. So I'm going to do it in about 20 minutes. So just hold on and glean what you can, and then read Ruth for yourself. And it's not a long read, but it's very fascinating. So we talked earlier, 25% of the American families have some estrangement, which is hard. That's a hard fact, and it's not the way God designed it. The good news is we can be part of God's family and come together like we are today, and experience what it is to be in a family. So let me start just by reading scripture, which is what I love to do. And the book of Ruth, again, is just a beautiful story of love and some tragedy, and that's how life is, right? It's not all just perfect. There's some bumps along the road for all of us. So your family matters wherever you are. Ruth chapter 1 verse 1. Now it came about in the days of the judges, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the land of Moab with his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. And they were of Bethlehem in Judah. Now they entered the land of Moab and remained there. So I think the names are important. And I think God uses names all throughout Scripture. And I think our names are important. So, and I think we're going to look at the babies' names today. And I'm going to ask the parents, why did you name your baby what you named your baby? Why is Isaiah Isaiah? And so we're going to talk about names. But Elimelech means my God is king. So that's the Hebrew word or name Elimelech, my God is king. But in our story today, we're going to find out that he didn't live up to his name. Okay? Keep that in mind. Naomi's name is the lovable, or my delight. So Naomi is my delight, his wife. Mahlon means sickly. Maybe he wasn't a very healthy baby, and they named him sickly. I don't know. But Chilion, his brother, was the pining one, or one passing away. That's not good either. So probably don't want to name your children that. And as you will see in the story, the names kind of reflect what happened. So it came about in the days of the judges. And what else was happening in the days of the judges? But what was the setting during this period? I got it up there, I think, on the board. In those days,
there was no king in Israel.
Okay.
Everyone did what was right.
That's the sad part. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. So basically, everybody was doing what they wanted to do. Does it sound much different than today? So this was like more than 2,000 years ago. This was like 3,000 years ago. So the cycle continues. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Okay, so we talked earlier that there's no such thing as a perfect family, and there's no such thing as a perfect life, right? And we run into times that are challenging. In other words, we face crisis in our lives. And this family is no different. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. And she was left with her two sons. Now, remember, they're in a foreign land. They're not in Bethlehem with their own clan, their own people. They're somewhere else in a foreign land, and they're probably not well received there. So maybe Elimelech didn't do the best thing by dragging his family into a foreign country where they weren't really welcome. So that's kind of where my God is king was not really reflective of his choices. The name of one, the sons took for themselves Moabite women as wives. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died. So a little bit of a crisis. Naomi has found herself widowed with two foreign daughters in a land that doesn't accept her, thanks to her husband's choices, right? So not in a good spot. And the woman was bereaved of her two children and her husband. So we've all obviously lost people along the way, I suspect, in this room. And I know in our family, my dad, married to my mom here, has passed away, and the four brothers, her brother and his two brothers and himself, all lost children in their 50s. So I've lost a brother, lost a father, and I've lost three cousins, all 50 years old. So we see this story still playing out in our lives. We've experienced it as a family. And yet yesterday we had a birthday party, didn't we, Grandmary?
Absolutely.
We had a big birthday party, and the house was full of great-grandchildren running all over the place. And surely we missed my father and my brother and the other members of our families that have gone on to be with the Lord. But the Lord replenishes families, and there was a joy there. with mixed with pain. And I don't think you ever stop. The pain never goes away, I don't think. I know probably we haven't talked about this. You're in public now, so.
Turn to gratitude that we even had them in our life at all. And then you can start enjoying who they were. Like your brother, which was into everything his whole life.
Yeah.
I can laugh about it now when I couldn't when it was happening.
Yeah.
But I see
So
God
as we
said,
look back and see the joy and the memories and how they impacted our lives and made us who we are, we carry that memory in. We can be grateful for our family members that have gone before us. So, Orpah, again, names here are important. Remember, Naomi is my delight. My delight is sitting over here. Orpah means a fawn or outward beauty, the wife of Chilion. And Ruth means a friend. A friend that is like inward beauty. A friend having inward beauty. A relationship with someone where there's an inward beauty. It's not something that is outward. Does that make sense? It's interesting, these two names, as the story unfolds. Remember, Jesus is teaching the disciples what all of this means, and I believe he's teaching us what this means today. So, at this difficult time, I think it's important to note that that families can stick together. We don't have to have this 25% estrangement. We can stick together. So, as the story unfolds, continuing in chapter 1, and they lifted up their voices and wept again. So Naomi decides to go back to Bethlehem, to her people. She heard, remember, what does Bethlehem mean? Again, names have meanings. House of bread. So the house of bread, Bethlehem. Who else was born in Bethlehem? Jesus is never the wrong answer in church.
Jesus.
Who else was born in Bethlehem?
Ask it again.
Who else was born in Bethlehem?
Jesus.
Okay, so they're going back to Bethlehem, the house of bread, where they had heard that they had food again. So they wept when Naomi said, "I'm going back, and I'm going to. You daughters need to stay here with your people. You don't need to go into a foreign land. You can find other husbands here." And but Orpah said, "No." Orpah said, "Okay, I'm staying. I love you. Goodbye." But Ruth clung to her. Ruth clung to her mother-in-law and said, "Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me and worse, if anything but death parts from me." So I've used that, and you've heard this way back in the day in weddings, right? Because that is like the union of a husband and wife. If anything but death separates us, may it be worse for me if I ever leave you. Well, this was really a story about a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. And yet I think it's very appropriate in a wedding, but it's not the proper context of what Jesus is trying to teach us in families. Sometimes families, it's not a biological situation. Sometimes families, it's through marriage. Sometimes it's through just other relationships. Sometimes it's through a church family. It's important that we commit to each other like this. So at this point, Jesus is starting to open the minds of the disciples, going, look, this is what a new believer or a new follower of me looks like. They make a commitment to me. Ruth is making a commitment, a lifelong commitment. This is what it looks like when you make a commitment to me. Inner beauty unfolds. That's what Ruth means, inner beauty. It begins to unfold as she makes a commitment. What happened to outer beauty? She faded away. How often do we fall for outer beauty and see it fade away? Inner beauty unfolds. So a new believer is bold. She started to say, I'm going with you no matter what. Okay. So where you go, I will go. Families stick together. And at this point, when we run into crises, we can trust and get to the point of gratitude, or we can stay bitter. And those are really the two choices that we all have in life, is to get better or get bitter. Because circumstances will weigh us down. And if we let them, they will hold us down and hold us back. We can get bitter. And I think we've all maybe, I suspect, been bitter a time or two, or for a moment anyways. So we know what this would be like. So Ruth comes back to Bethlehem with her daughter-in-law, no husband, husband's deceased, both sons have died, and she's got this one Moabite widowed daughter-in-law, and she shows back up in Bethlehem. Now it came about in the days when, where did I go? Sorry. Families get better or get bitter. So they, okay. I know I don't need technical help, but I might. Let me just start the slideshow and go that way. All right, and they, so they both went until they came to Bethlehem. So they went back, Ruth, Naomi and Ruth, and they had come to Bethlehem, and all the city was in a stir because of them, because they knew what had happened. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" And she said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty." So, kind of at the bottom of her emotional state, coming back into Bethlehem, has lost everything, and she's coming back somewhat bitter. You can't blame her, right? At this point, she's going, "God brought me back bitter. So just don't call me lovely don't call me delight anymore. Call me bitter." So she's going through a process, I believe, of going from these circumstances, I'm not happy at all about these circumstances, to where she's going to end up. All right, so families can get better or bitter, and so we find ourselves back in Bethlehem, and there's a lot to this story. I'm going to touch on the highlights as we go. I told you it was a 4-month study. I'm doing it in 25 minutes, hopefully. So they get back, and back in the days, in these days, the family was important. The names were important. Property went along with the names. The wives kind of went along with the husbands and or the property. There was a lot of Jewish law there that God developed through Moses to keep and sustain the Jewish families, the Jewish property, to help wealthy people from taking advantage of the poor, was the bottom line here. So there is a Levitical law in place to protect the poor. So we can rest assured Naomi and Ruth were pretty poor at this point. They had the clothes on their back. And so they could have been taken advantage of. But because of the law, they had a process they could go through in order to regain the name of the deceased husbands. So God didn't want children born into families or families cut off, the name of families cut off. So that's another reason why names are important. You don't want your name cut off, especially in the Jewish culture. So anyways, the long and the short of it is, there was a kinsman redeemer, a near relative named Boaz. And so Boaz means promptness in response or cheerful readiness. Ultimately, Boaz is the kinsman redeemer. And if you've never heard of the term kinsman redeemer, it's just a kinfolk that's got some money, right? So he redeems Ruth because she is the widow of the deceased son of Naomi, who is the wife of the deceased husband of Elimelech, and there was no male heirs to carry on the name, and there was property that was associated with the sons that were deceased. So the kinsman redeemer had to buy the land to claim the bride. Does that sound familiar? As Jesus is teaching the story, he's going, I am your kinsman redeemer because I had to buy you out of sin and death. And I had to pay the price for you. And now you are those that received me and believe this are now members of my family. You are co-heirs with me. You have inherited the field, so to speak. Then Elimelech, oh golly, I must be touching this with my thumb. Let me go like this. So basically a family, husbands, requires commitment. And I think God's talking, obviously, to the mothers. We know it requires a commitment. Initially, physically, a 9-month commitment, but we know it's a lifelong commitment. But husbands, it's also a lifelong commitment. Then Boaz, son of Rahab. Who was Rahab?
The one that killed the spies, right?
The prostitute that killed, that saved her family and lived in Jericho. So see how the story starts, this line. I want you to just see the names and the line continue here. So we start with the prostitute, Boaz's mother. Boaz comes into the picture and marries Ruth. We're getting there, and we'll see how that story ends. Then Boaz, kinsman redeemer, all that you have done for, it has been known, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me. So if we find ourselves, let's find ourselves in Ruth's position. Just for a minute, men, you can handle this. Pretend like you're Ruth, and you've made a commitment to the Lord, and you find yourself with nothing except for that commitment to the Lord. We're trusting God with our lives and our future. Just like Ruth was trusting her life and future with Boaz. Boaz was older, and he decided that he was going to fulfill his commitment to the family. So Jesus is committing to you to fulfill you. Response and promptness, a cheerful readiness. It cost him something. He had to make a commitment to Ruth. Jesus has made a commitment to you. And husbands, families are expensive. If anybody has not paid the bills lately, and women, you understand too, if you're working, it's expensive to have a family. And Boaz said, may you be blessed of the Lord, my daughter. All the people in the city know that you are a woman of excellence. I will redeem you as the Lord lives. In other words, I'm going to buy the field, and that's going to extend the name of the deceased husbands. That line will continue, and you will be my wife. So to redeem means to set free by paying a price. A family is expensive. Boaz had to pay a high price. There was another relative that was closer than him, but he wasn't willing to pay the higher price. We don't even know what his name is. His name is left out of the Bible. He was referred to as so-and-so wouldn't buy the field. He would not. He wanted the wife. He goes, yeah, I'll take her. Oh, I got to buy the field? No thanks. I'm not going to pay the price. I'll take the wife, but I won't pay for the field. A lot of religions are like that. Only Jesus paid in full for you and redeemed you and set you free. So real quick to review, because I know we jumped through a lot of hoops here. Families matter to God. Families face crises. The enemy is attempting to break down families and anything that resembles the family of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Families who choose God as King stick together in life's journey. We can get better or we can get bitter because we will face these crises, but families can help, whether it's your natural family or a church family or your people that you're committing your life to. Families require commitment and get rather expensive. However, after all that hard work, families are a blessing to all today and to future generations. So in chapter 4, the neighbor women, all the women that first saw Naomi come in and she said, "I'm just bitter," saw what had happened, and they saw that a son had been born, and they had been given to Naomi, so they named him, the women of the town of Bethlehem named the baby Obed. So he is our 8th character in the story. Obed means serving or worshiping. He's the son of Boaz and Ruth, and the grandfather of David, King David, who is in the lineage of Jesus. So he became the father of Jesse, the father of David, and the lineage of Jesus. So we start with a prostitute. Boaz is born. Boaz redeems Ruth. And then Obed is born, which means worship. And then through Obed, King David is born, and through King David, Jesus is born. You see how the importance of this story? It's just like a little story shoved into the Bible. 4 chapters, short, fun story. Typical story, family tragedy, redemption. Everything comes out good at the end. But it's more than that. Jesus is teaching us that it's a redemptive story, that he is the Boaz in our lives, and we are the Ruth to him. We make a commitment like Ruth made to Naomi. It's a full commitment, and then Jesus responds, and we are redeemed. And from us, God can do generational work. So that's why we use this story for babies today, because I believe that through these babies, God can do anything. God can work generationally through these babies today. So Jesus is going as he's teaching his disciples, and Obed was my great grandfather. And I'm sure their eyes kind of opened up. It started with Naomi, and it went through Ruth to Boaz, and Jesus is our Redeemer today. So in closing, and if I was a Baptist preacher, that would mean I was halfway through. Worship is the result of a family whose God is king. So when Obed is born, he's born of a Redeemer claiming the heart of inner beauty. Worship is the result. When we, parents, y'all can go ahead and grab your babies and come on up. When a Redeemer claims the heart of inner beauty, when Jesus claims you, when you're willing to fall at Jesus' feet, worship is the result. It's generational. The believer fully trusting God as King, Jesus as Lord, will be a worshiper.